Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with several entrepreneurship educators and directors from the region. Folks, thanks for joining us today. We have a really great conversation about helping small businesses, helping entrepreneurs, especially during this very difficult and challenging time we're in. So let's start, ladies first. Anne-Marie, tell us about yourself and where you work.
Sure. Okay. So welcome, everybody. Anne-Marie Maman. I'm the Executive Director of the Princeton Entrepreneurship Council. I think maybe you know Princeton is new into entrepreneurship. We're late to the party, but we're moving quickly. So we've been around. I've been on campus almost 5 years. And I focus largely on alumni, community, local community. Now we're under the Dean for Research, so we're also focusing on faculty, on grad students, and on postdocs. And then we have a sister organization, the Keller Center, that focuses largely on the undergraduates. Of course, we all work together and we collaborate. Some of the things that we've done over the last 5 years, we've put up that incubator, the Innovation Center. We've been doing conferences. We did the Empower Conference, the Engage Conference. We've got the Empower Conference coming. We do panel discussions. We have Wharton coming on to do a program for our faculty next week. And the week after, we have Techstars coming on to do a program for our graduate students. And we're open to ideas and suggestions and collaborations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Susan, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Scherreik. I'm the founding director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies at Seton Hall University. And first of all, Anne-Marie, I'd like to say I know of your great work with your incubator, and a lot of the resources that we all offer, including yours, are open to entrepreneurs throughout the state and outside of the state. So think of us not just as academic programs, but also as resources for you. We offer an array of resources, largely for our undergraduate and graduate students. We're housed in our School of Business, but we offer programs for students throughout the campus. We have startup contests. We have summer boot camps. We have summer accelerator programs. We're teaching students to launch businesses, work for small businesses, and also a very exciting area is to be what we call entrepreneurs, be innovators in corporate settings as well. So I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. And one last thing is I also do run a statewide program for colleges and university. It's called UPitchNJ, and all of my colleagues, universities are involved. We put on an annual startup contest so that we can get students in New Jersey together. They can network. Hopefully they start companies together and they create jobs for New Jersey.
Great. Thank you, Susan. All right, go ahead, Dale. You're next.
Well, first, it feels like old home day because I went to Princeton undergrad, got my MBA from Wharton, I got my doctorate from Seton Hall. So that's I love all of you. So it's good. I'm Dale Caldwell. I'm the executive director of the Fairleigh Dickinson University Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We were actually the first to really do this. We're over 30 years old. Our focus has been on family businesses, veteran businesses, and small businesses. So our family business, we have a family business alliance every Friday, or most Fridays, we have a family business Friday Zoom call to really have just information, experts, and family businesses. We have a program that's become very national called Veterans Launching Ventures, where we have 49, actually in this class starting in January, we have 49 people from 24 different states. We also are one of the voices around entrepreneurship and coming up with some innovative ideas. We've written a number of articles about entrepreneurship, and we're looking to partner with other universities, with government, with the private sector. So Jim, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. And Suresh, go ahead.
Hey, how are you guys doing? I want to first thank Jim for the wonderful work he's been doing, connecting the ecosystem and introducing a lot of exciting, interesting people to us. So thank you, Jim. My track record for 20 years has been as an entrepreneur. I've had 3 ventures, which I have built and then exited. And for the last about 4 years, I've been in academic settings, starting with Columbia, briefly with SBDC Rutgers. Currently, I am the director of entrepreneurship programs and professor of practice at NJIT. So my role is not just teaching, but also taking these teams and connecting them with mentors and outside support organizations. And we've been, I think, fairly successfully doing it. NJIT, as you know, has had, I think, one of the largest incubators in the state. So we are going beyond that incubator to get the students out and get their startups from ideas into actual practical businesses. So we've been focusing on that. Lastly, I just want to also add that for the last year, I've been closely involved with the Biden campaign with their small business and entrepreneurship development program. I think it'll be reassuring for viewers to know that this was a campaign where they really took in a lot of good feedback from the community and on a really diverse basis. So you have people from every possible background come in, give feedback, and that feedback actually has gone up to the highest levels of the campaign. So I think in the midst of all the political turmoil that we are facing, it'll be reassuring to know that that process took place last year.
Great. Well, thank you, Suresh. So first I want to ask about, what you're seeing out there in the business community. Give us an update on what you're seeing in each of your geographic areas and beyond. So let's start with you, Susan. Go ahead.
Well, Jim, first of all, there's a lot of hurt out there. We know that 30% of all small businesses have closed in New Jersey over the last year. And nationwide, there's only 5% of small businesses that say that they have not been impacted by the pandemic. But what we're seeing locally, and probably nationwide too, it's a bifurcated small business market right now. There are a lot of small businesses that are directly work with consumers, restaurants, gyms, lots of businesses that have been very hurt and have many of them have closed. However, there's a lot of businesses in the digital spaces that have thrived. We have two young alumni. One runs a retail specialty online shop operation in Hoboken. They're the 17th fastest growing business in New Jersey now. Another one of our alum runs a medical digital operation. They're the 8th fastest growing business in New Jersey. So it's really, if you're in a digital space that is growing in healthcare or in certain retail areas, online mattress, Bear Mattress was a winner in the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year contest this year. There are very bright spots, but how do we give advice to the people who are hurting? And I would say that what I'm seeing is, first of all, entrepreneurs are resilient. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers. So if I know of an owner of a company that does transportation for nationally for huge events, for sporting events, for golf tournaments, for tennis. They've shifted a lot to working with hospitals for transportation. So I think that if entrepreneurs can bring their skill base to areas of need in the pandemic, that's a good thing. So I think the survivors are changing their business models. They're trying to think of new markets. They're thinking quickly on their feet, about what they can do.
Great. Thanks, Susan. Dale, how about you?
Well, there are a number of things. So we and Jim, I forgot to mention, Jim was a more illustrious director of the Rothman Institute before me. So it's an honor to try to fill his very, very big shoes. As Jim knows, we've done a lot with family businesses. One of the things that I often tell politicians is that when you are closing a family business, basically everybody in the family is unemployed. So they don't have additional revenue and they don't understand the pain that people have when you're a family restaurant and you close them down. So we've been a real advocate on doing that and written a number of articles about kind of a pandemic equity grant, that a lot of the big box stores have remained open and have had record profits. They should really grant some of that money to local family businesses and not in a tax as much as a grant. So we're really seeing a lot of that. But the pain too is also in urban areas, and we're really growing deeper into urban areas. There's some stats that are showing that up to 40% of African-American businesses are going to close because of the pandemic. So one of the things, and you had heard me earlier talk about this entrepreneur zone, built around the idea of an opportunity zone, but the idea is to really provide tax credits to people who invest in businesses in urban communities. That was passed in the legislature as a working group, and we're trying to hopefully work with Biden-Harris and others to make this a national program to really help to bring those communities back around from private dollars, because government doesn't have enough money to turn them around.
Great, thank you, Dale. And as you mentioned, the new administration, let's turn to Suresh.
Jim, so I am the survivor of two crises, the 9/11 and 2008-9 crisis. But those were all localized and for a shorter time frame. So this is really unprecedented, and it's not really one crisis. It's like I can count five. You have a health crisis, you have an economic crisis, you have a social crisis, then you have a climate crisis, and the latest is the political crisis, right? So you have all these five happened in 2000, just in 1 year. So the way I look at it is that you had a Q1 and Q2, which is more like a shock and awe time, where entrepreneurs were reacting almost like a deer caught in the headlights. So it is more reflexive and reactive. And it was only in Q3 and 4 that most entrepreneurs really got a bearing of where they are. And what I've seen happen is, first of all, a kind of a revalidation of the products and services. Can they sell what they have been doing so far? And then things like business model reviews, reviewing channels of distribution, partners, looking at office space requirement, looking at new employee hire requirements, funding needs, and most importantly, digital strategies. And I think this is one area that there's a lot of confusion, because even understanding digital is not just like a simple monolith term. You have a lot of layers in digital marketing, right? So you have the plain vanilla, just search engine optimization, all the way to how do you use an e-commerce store, and how do you really propel social media to bring in users in there. So these are all finely layered approach. Unfortunately, most small businesses, true small businesses, have not had enough education and exposure in those areas. So I think it's more like they are now finding their feet. And I've been working with some of my student startups with respect to giving them that head start, teaching them the basic, how do they be part of an e-commerce platform? How do they connect with local ecosystems and kind of leverage what's already available out there? That's where my focus has been.
Great, thank you, Suresh. Anne-Marie, do you want to round that? There was a lot of information there. You want to round that out?
Well, the only difference I would say is that we work more with the venture-backed than the small business and family business. And I do see that in the venture-backed, that early funding has gotten harder and harder. I thought it couldn't get harder. It's gotten harder and harder, which means that by the time that you get to fundable, VC fundable, first of all, those rounds are huge. They're compared to before, an A round used to be 3 to 5. Now we're seeing A rounds in the 100 million. And also you have to have a lot of fundable milestones to hit before you get funding. So it's been pushing back, I think, for probably 20 years since I was an entrepreneur, but now it's even pushing farther and farther and farther back. The money is there when they can get it, but getting to the point of being fundable is very difficult.
Right, well said, well said. So let's talk about, I know Suresh mentioned resources, so let's jump to that right now. There was money coming down from the federal government and state government. Let's jump back to Suresh, since he can speak to it from, not only local, but maybe what he might see what is coming down the road.
So there are two levels of this, Jim. So one of them is what is available through government sources, which basically, I think the small businesses will have to depend on that at least for the next 3 to 6 months. So that is one pool. And the second pool is maybe just doing the right things. And how do you prioritize that over the next few months so that you can survive just being there? I recall in 9/11, I had to do that when I had most of my customers was in downtown Manhattan. In one day, the whole customer base was kind of wiped out. So what do you do in that scenario? How do you survive for the next 6 months until things turn around was the focus, right? So you had to kind of negotiate with everybody that you're doing business with, your vendors, your partners, even your landlord. My landlord, whom we were paying a rent, suddenly then turned out to became an equity holder in my company. Fortunately, he got well paid later on, but that becomes a process. So if you don't mind, Jim, I'll maybe focus on what are those things an entrepreneur can do. What are the right things they should do right now just to survive through the next 3 to 6 months? So I think if the focus can be on getting customers, how do you retain? So getting and retaining customers is, I think, one area that entrepreneurs really need to focus on. And it is basically whatever it takes is the answer to the question. And how do you deliver value, right? So you've got to maybe deliver a little bit more than what you've done in the past. So you've got to maybe focus on that aspect of, so it could be service, it could be a different channel of delivery, whatever that is. Another important element to focus on is how do you retain employees? And I think that becomes very important, especially when you're going through a crisis where I think there's no way out than maybe having a pay cut in many cases, right? And so how do you negotiate that? Maybe it could be a combination of an equity-based compensation as opposed to all cash, or some kind of a combination that can be creatively structured. And obviously, you got to think of things like how do you compensate equity by maybe giving a little bit extra for the risk that they're taking. So a couple of other things that I had is how do you enhance your technical capabilities, right? And this is a time really you need to have a few key people in the company really know how do you do that social media marketing, and how do you keep track of where the business is coming from so that you can then invest more along those. And I think the final aspect would be in terms of execution, because I think I like the saying that I'm not sure who to attribute it to, but when the tide is high, everybody looks like great swimmers. It's when the tide goes down that it reveals the people who have been swimming naked. I think it was Warren Buffett who said this, but I think that's so true now. And last year actually has revealed that. And I think so now is the time to kind of hone in on that execution skills so that it really, the delivery starts happening. So that's my quick comment on.
Great, thank you. And we'll circle back on some of the other resources available. Why don't we stay on that line of insights with Dale. Dale, what are you recommending to folks in your community?
Well, one of the things, and this is just a great question, one of the realities is that people need to become entrepreneurs. One of the things that you realize is not every small business, in fact, some would say most small business people are not entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are forward thinking. I work a lot, as I said, with family businesses. Many family businesses have been successful for 100 years. And they're going along, they're plodding along, things are fine. They don't understand what the word pivot means. So you really have to do that. And one of the groups we've worked with is Andrew Frazier. We've developed an asynchronous entrepreneur training program that we've partnered with him. And so maybe it's time to go back to school to really have a road scholarship, kind of a road meaning on the road of highway of entrepreneurship. So that's one piece. The next piece is in a role that we're playing as a university. I'm amazed how few entrepreneurs know their mayors, their council, their assembly folks, their congress people. So now when money is coming around, they don't know their bankers, they don't know their accountants well. And so many of them were left behind because they didn't get access to this money because they didn't have those relationships. So you need to really build those relationships. And in addition, as I said, the landlords and others who are out there, but the public sector has to be part of this equation. And entrepreneurs understand that. Small business leaders often don't. So I'm really trying to encourage people to do that. And just finally, one other thing, and it's really interesting. I noticed a lot of the restaurants, when this first happened, many of them said, okay, we'll wait it out. We're just going to disappear, wait it out. Others said, we're going to lose money, but we are actually going to reach out to customers. We're going to do takeout. We're losing money, but we want to stay in the customer's mind's eye. And they are the ones that are surviving this. The ones that hid like a turtle are struggling. So you need to really think long-term and realize you've got to maintain those relationships with the people that are key to your business.
Great. Thank you, Dale. All right, Anne-Marie.
So I think that the piece of advice that we give most often is to tap into your network. Now is the time that it's really important to think about who you know that can help you, whether that's helping you with an introduction to a customer, whether that's helping you think through strategy, giving you advice, somebody who's been there, done that before, whether it's giving you an introduction to a banker, a lawyer, whether it's connecting you to somebody else. Maybe they can't, but maybe they know somebody else that can. So if you haven't been before, start tapping into that network as hard as you can. Smart, you have to be smart about it. I think that's one piece. And the other piece is, I think for a while it was easier to float along without having everything buckled down and without really having your strategy, your finances, without really knowing what you're talking about. And there's no room for that anymore. You really have to do your work on your basic foundation if you're going to be going out and answering questions about your business.
Right. Thank you. Susan?
I'd like to build on 2 points that my fellow experts made. One of them is just on social media and staying in the public eye. No matter what your business, I think on social media, if you can portray a good, kind, supportive image during the pandemic, and stay in the public eye in many ways. It could be through charitable giving. I know of one entrepreneur who every week would bring pizzas to police departments to say thank you to essential workers and would publicize that on social media. That was wonderful because the image and the reputation that you keep and maintain during the pandemic will play a big role in how customers perceive you once this is over and we are recovering. So I think you could partner with other small businesses. There's so many ways that you can help, and that projects a wonderful image in social media. The other thing is the point that you made, Anne-Marie, about financials. Entrepreneurs, just like all of us, we're so busy putting out today's crisis. And there's more of that today. We're putting out today's fire and then tomorrow's fire. So we're so focused on day-to-day survival, and why that is proper. We need to take a step back. We have to start thinking more of, think 20% of your time on long-term planning. Look at your financial. What's your income statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow statements look like now compared to a year ago? How does that look? What are you going to need going forward? The other thing is your business model. And, people call business plan, business model, but take a look at that. Is your business model going to work? Dale, you talk about that with small businesses, but it applies to everyone. You may not be able to continue to do business exactly how you did. We in academia love to talk about a lean startup process of customer discovery. Make sure you're in tune with your customers. What do they want from you going forward? We're not going to go exactly back to the world before 2020. And so try to stay on top of that. So then when we do start recovering, you're going to be able to lead the way rather than follow. So I would say stay with your, short term, put out those fires, but your long-term planning can be very important.
Great. Thank you, Susan. And let's circle back to the resources part. There was a lot of money coming down from the federal government, and there's been money from the state government. There's still probably a lot of confusion. So if anyone wants to take that and just talk about some of those programs.
I think the best thing probably to do is to reach out to the NJEDA, make sure that you know who your contact person is, get on to their radar so that they can think about you as you're growing your business and what you're appropriate for in funding, and they can watch you grow. And the programs have changed a little bit. I know that, for example, the angel tax credit Now, if you're a woman-owned or a minority-owned business, it's larger. It's all larger, but it's even larger for a minority and women-owned. Now with the new Evergreen Fund coming in, which has not started yet, but has just been approved. I believe I'm right on that. So I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but I think they're the right ones that'll be telling us.
Let me build on, and one of the reasons for the hesitation is that there is money coming through different programs, but Tim Sullivan, who was just wonderful at the Economic Development Authority, is taking some of the federal money, packaging it with some state money and creating new programs. So really the best thing you do, and Al Titone from the Small Business Administration, we've had both of them on our shows. So if you Google SBA, Small Business Administration, and you Google in New Jersey Economic Development Authority, there are some amazing programs that they get it. And it's so great to see some public officials who get it. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. One of the things that I say is that if every politician in America had to have made payroll, this would be a very different country. That people would understand what it's like and how difficult it is and how you don't sleep at night if you don't have the revenue coming in to actually pay your employees. So and that's what we're trying to do at Rothman, is really be a voice for entrepreneurship and really kind of in a positive way push the politicians to say, don't you understand that the backbone of America is entrepreneurship, it's small business. You've got to make sure they are successful.
Jim, I want to mention about a gap in the system, which is that traditionally most startups, the founders and the early employees are not on the payroll for a pretty long period of time, right? Usually a year, 2 years. And that's been a gap because the PPP program required a payroll. So it's important that even if you're a startup and you really don't have the money for a payroll, you at least have a small payroll going. And I would suggest that you should start it right now in January, because when the next big funding comes through, you really need to have a payroll. You need to have ideally maybe even an office. So things like that, small things to get ready. And what I have done with my committee is to kind of push the startup funding piece, because that was the missing piece, I believe, in the CARES Act. There was no funding for startups, and especially student startups. And I know of, I'm sure all of you know of, a lot of student ventures where the students actually gave up very lucrative jobs to kind of pursue the startup path. And we really need to support them to kind of be on the game for some time until they test things out. So I think that was a gap which needs to be filled, and startups really need to prepare to be ready for it.
Right. And I would just note each of your programs, businesses can reach out for help for whether it's guidance or interns. In addition, there's the SBDCs, there's SCORE, there's economic development organizations in each town that are helping with the grants and funds coming. So the entrepreneurs and small business owners need to reach out, right? I mean, be proactive and reach out to many people for guidance and help. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, Jim, that you're absolutely right. I mean, in the past 2 weeks alone, there's been, both in New Jersey and on the federal level, new announcements about small business assistance. So you're right. Everyone has to be looking at these websites for what's up. LinkedIn for Small Businesses is a great resource to keep up with a lot of developments. So the entrepreneur today also has to be a researcher. And as Anne-Marie, as you pointed out, if you form those, with the SBA loan officer at your local bank, and also with venture groups. I mean, you may not qualify, especially now, if you're not showing revenue, for a lot of loans out there. But, Golden Seeds, the new program for women entrepreneurs and venture capital and in angel investing. I mean, there are resources. They may not be able to give you money right away, but you're forming relationships with them, and often they will mentor you. They'll look at your business plans and your business models. They'll give you advice. So that networking and also staying on top of resources, you're looking at today's resources and you're networking for tomorrow's resources.
I couldn't agree more. Clearly, people have to continue networking, even online and virtually. And in some ways, if entrepreneurs get good at it, they can really be at an advantage, if they could build those relationships virtually, because that's really going to be important as they survive and thrive in the future, whether it's for funding or talent or guidance. So why don't we do this? We're going to start asking folks for questions, but before we do, I wanted to ask everyone, just give us one thing, give us one tip that you recommend that entrepreneurs and small business owners take away from this discussion. So let's start with you, Anne-Marie.
The thing I always come back to for myself as well as for people that I'm talking to is first things first. You have to make sure to do the first things and do them well before you can grow to do other things.
Great, thank you. Dale, let's go to you.
Well, one of the things that even people who were entrepreneurs who really weren't technology savvy, we've now been forced to be on Zoom, to use YouTube and so on. And so many entrepreneurs don't take advantage of the incredible resources that are out there. As I said, we have an asynchronous online training program. There's that, you go on. So my tip is that understand that you don't know everything, no matter how long you've been in business. Be hungry for learning, because I will guarantee there's something on the internet, something or something on just YouTube that is going to make you $10,000 more than you would have made over the next month. I'll guarantee that, but you got to find it.
That's right. And most things are free, right? So there's no barriers anymore. All right, Susan, go ahead.
I would say put people first, put your employees first. We're still, as the small business owner, the entrepreneur is struggling, but we're all going through this pandemic and there's a huge illness out there too. Make sure, check in with your employees, make sure they're okay, make sure their families are okay. If they need more flexibility in their schedules, whatever it might be, don't forget that human element. They are your lifeblood and they're people, and we all have to stick together to get through this. And that human element is something that we can't forget.
Thank you, Susan. Suresh?
So my quick thought would be for entrepreneurs to understand that entrepreneurship is a community sport. So my good friend, Victor Huang, who was VP with the Kauffman Foundation, he makes this statement that 3 out of every 1,000 people in a community in general are either inventors or entrepreneurs, right? But their success, the success of that 3 depends on what does the other 997 people do, right? So, and how can they help? How can the rest of the 997 help? They can be customers, investors, they can help as champions, partners, suppliers, mentors. So the question I would ask is, every entrepreneur is, how are you engaging the rest, the other 997 will determine your success. Now, it's not you can't take it for granted. It's not going to happen. You have got to build that, what I call high trust relationships, right? And that would not happen online only. It's got to be done in other ways too. And I think you've got to focus on that. There's a big community out there who are right there, your neighbors. And if you can engage them constructively, you have a much better chance of succeeding.
Thank you for that, Suresh. And I would just say that now is a great time, if you're not in a business, to start a business. There's been a surge in new startups and new ventures. And now that we're at probably the bottom-ish of this downturn, there are more, if you can find an opportunity and take advantage of it, you can find talent more easily, more reasonably. And if you could fund it through friends and family, and through loans, which are very low, very cheap these days, interest rates, you should do it. So let's get to questions, folks. So the first one is, what's happening with small businesses working with hardware and technology? What advice do you have, if different, for these types of small businesses?
So a quick thought I would have is how do they make that pivot from the like an office environment into a home or a smaller office setup? And how do you do it with maybe an enhanced cybersecurity operation? So perhaps it's kind of got to be that pivot that they've got to make. and how best to do it with partners who really have a proven track record there, I think would be one move that they could make in this environment.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that, folks?
Yeah, let me add to that. I mean, it's really about knowing your customer. I often say that empathy is the #1 skill in business. I say empathy, that's so soft. No, you need to empathize with your customers. You need to empathize with your employees. And so often people have had a successful business and they're stuck at doing things the same way. So if you're a hardware technology business and you don't find the customers you used to find, you've got to pivot. And I find that as I do consulting to businesses, a lot of people are really unwilling to pivot because they know what they know. And so you have to ask that question, am I serving the community in the way that they need me to serve them? You know, am I serving the customers in the way I need? And so that's a question that I would ask because there's some that are going to do real well, but there's some that are going to die like the dinosaur.
Right. Well, what about those small businesses, on Main Street, right? And all of the main streets are now, there's a lot of vacancies, and it's really disappointing. It's heartbreaking, frankly. Is there anything that those businesses can do as soon as, especially as we go into a dark winter, right? Amidst this pandemic, any other ideas that you might suggest for those types of businesses?
Well, let me say this publicly, and Suresh, who has a lot of influence, is that I was actually a broker when AT&T was split up, when the baby bells came, and every one of the baby bells did well. And Jeff Bezos was at Princeton when I was there. I didn't know him, but if they continue to take, and it's good business to continue to take, government, shouldn't necessarily break them up. But one of the things, Suresh, that I'm actually suggesting is, wouldn't it be great that if you access Amazon, because Amazon's so convenient, we're gonna access Amazon, but you did it through your favorite Main Street store, and you bought through them, and Amazon would share some of that revenue with that store, so that what they could do is begin to fund Main Street, because their Main Street will never compete with Amazon. It just can't do the volume and so on. But that kind of thing, instead of breaking up Amazon and say, hey, you have two choices. And I think we have to do that because people don't understand how important that Main Street business is to America, to jobs, to the community. It's not just about, and that's one of the things, I love technology. It's so important. But I think sometimes we talk only about technology like those are the only businesses out there. We need to realize that there are a lot of plumbers, there are a lot of young people getting in the plumbing business that are making a heck of a lot of money as entrepreneurs, and an electrician and so on. So I think we need to really look at the large landscape. We can't let the world be just a tech company. We've got to support those local businesses.
I'm reminded of something I heard about your budget should be developed as a moral compass. And so for my own personal budget, I'm talking about supporting local businesses. So it's very easy to click and buy it from Amazon, but the bookstore uptown will also do it. It might mean you have to drive up and they'll bring it to your car, but that's supporting your local economy. And that local bookstore will support another local, which will support another local. So whether or not we are in a local business, I do think that it is right for us to be spending locally as much as we can.
And Anne-Marie, I totally agree with you. And I think there's a lot of buzz about this now, about don't just click on Amazon, think more, is it Etsy? You can buy something custom made or that book at the local bookstore. And so one solution would be for the small businesses to be reaching, I think, especially those younger consumers who really do think carefully about where they want to put their dollars, and try to reach them with that message. As you said, you buy the book from Amazon. What's one book to Amazon? But you buy that or 5 books from the local bookstore, it's going to mean a lot to the bookstore and its employees. So if maybe we have more campaigns along those lines, that's a strategy that could help small businesses, because I think there's a growing consciousness about that very thing.
Can I just quickly add that to enable this to happen, and all 3 of you made excellent points on this, but make it happen, you really need to have that local digital marketplace in place. because a consumer does not want to go and buy one thing from one store and then log out, pay, and then go to another place. So you really need to have a place that all businesses can have a presence, and a consumer can really go in like a mall and make those purchases, make one payment and exit out, right? And that's something, frankly, instead of giving money as grants without a reason or something attached to it, I think that money has got to go to building these e-commerce platforms, more like a digital marketplaces that can serve as a main street, virtual main street. So I think that is a requirement. Canada has already taken some steps to do it, but US is not there yet.
Let me ask this, this question just came in about, how the pandemic is affecting your programs, interest in entrepreneurship programs in general at each of your universities.
I'll start that one. Oh.
Go ahead, yeah.
So we switched very quickly to the Zoom platform. We did everything in person. What we are finding is that we get people logging in from around the world. Often we have people on our panel discussions that are attending from all over, and our volume of participants has really gone up. So from that perspective, information, I think, is easier to pull, and I find myself going at night listening to things that I might not have gone to because I didn't want to get out of my slippers. So that's one of them. The other thing is from the students' perspective. Now, our students are all remote. They're coming back on campus, but they've been remote. They've had more time. So we've seen a growth in student startups, which has been interesting to watch. Some really good ones.
Great to hear. Dale, go ahead.
I was going to say that I mean, the pandemic has, in some ways, has been great for some folks and not great for others. And we've benefited that we've become a national organization. Our Veterans Launching Ventures program, as I was alluding to, has become one of the best known in the country because we're doing Zoom and you can come and join us anywhere. As you know, Jim, we used to be just New Jersey. This last cohort, we got 49 people from 24 states, nobody from New Jersey. So we actually have, all over. And we actually like that because we've trained a lot of people. So, and then on campus, we happen to have a new Pierre Baltazar, the new dean, who comes from California. He recognizes that entrepreneurship is really the tail that should drive the business school, the Silberman College Business School. Whereas before, as you know, Jim, we were often overlooked by the business school. Rothman is just an addition to the business school. Well, he's making sure that we are a key component of really making FDU a real business presence. And so in that way, it's been very, very good. And I just can't say enough good things about our dean. Great.
And Susan, did you want to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like everyone else, we went virtual. And the very nature of entrepreneurship is doing. You learn, you go back and you learn some more. So that really lends itself to a virtual environment in terms of student learning. The other thing is, Seton Hall is very much known for its very strong community and network of alumni in all different areas. And certainly we took advantage of that in entrepreneurship. Virtually any student could be mentored by any important entrepreneur who probably answer his or her email in about 5 minutes. So a lot of people are still busy, but they're working at home and they have more time on their hands and they welcome a diversion to mentor student businesses. So we've seen a real uptick in the interaction of, our successful alumni entrepreneurs and working with them. So that's been a big plus. And I agree with Anne-Marie that students and also recent graduates who have studied entrepreneurship, they're not afraid to go out and, maybe they're working on a business idea at the university, but now they've graduated. They've come up with another business idea that fits living in Texas and, whatever. And they've taken those skills and they've pivoted, and they may not have found a full-time job yet or looked, but you know what? They're not afraid to just get out there and have the confidence to start whatever is in front of them and take advantage of opportunities. So we've seen that as well. And the other thing is, I find that students might not want to all dip their toe into entrepreneurship. So we're really pushing not just entrepreneurship, but innovation and entrepreneurship. In fact, we just changed the name of our center to the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship from Entrepreneurial Studies. And that means just innovation everywhere. And so, when we started our program so many years ago, entrepreneurs were pretty brand new and they became a force in the economy. But entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurial thinking has grown beyond that. And anyone who works for a large corporation today has to be a self-starter, has to be creative, has to be innovative. And a line I know Anne-Marie use a lot in Princeton is we have to make everyone comfortable working with uncertainty. And certainly the pandemic brought that up more than anything. This is the most uncertain environment, but students who are trained or people who have experience working in uncertainty, which is hello, every entrepreneur, they have a better chance of surviving. So these skills apply to everyone.
Thank you, Susan. And Suresh, you want to close that out?
Yes, just a quick thought, because NJIT, you have a lot of students coming from economically a little bit more challenged group. My focus has been on creating or developing their mindset rather than pushing them to start a venture, because sometimes you do a disservice by insisting that they really put their idea and start it up when they're not really ready for it yet. So I think my focus has been, if you can understand the process of entrepreneurship, develop the mindset, the curiosity and collecting data, acting on experimenting, the lean startup methodology, you may start your venture 5, 10, 15 years down the line, but just to get them into that thought process is where my focus has been. And that's been working well in a virtual environment.
That's great. I couldn't agree with all of those comments more. So why don't we're going to close this out. I've asked each of you to, say a poem or excerpts.
So I'm going to go back to where I come back to all the time. That's first things first. Focus on the core things and grow from there.
Great. Thank you. Susan, go ahead.
I'll also reiterate something else I had said, and it's like, don't just focus on today and putting out today's fire. Take the longer view for longer planning, so you're getting ready for when the pandemic is over.
Great. Thank you. All right. Suresh.
Jim, this is not a poetry, but it is more of a talk. One of my favorite, and I'm sure most of you would agree with me, the talk by President Teddy Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena. So that's very applicable to entrepreneurship process. So in summary, what he mentions is that the only one who counts is the one who is in the fight. They get covered with dust and grime, they're beaten down, they fall, but they get up and fight again, right? So, and entrepreneurs is just like that person in the arena. So all you got to do is that sometimes you just got to do that, just repeat getting up, standing up and doing your best to fight. It's only they who count and not the critics. So that's kind of one of my favorite talks
Thank
about
you.
that.
Very appropriate. Dale, go ahead.
And I'm going to say something that that people might disagree with initially, but then when they think about it. And so one of the most troubling myths in entrepreneurship in America is this idea of the self-made man. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. And so I wrote a book called Intelligent Influence, and that we're all products of our influence. And so my quote is, we do what we do, think the way we think, and accomplish what we accomplish because of influence. Nobody's ever done it alone, no matter what they think. And so when you're out there thinking about the influence you have, the people who influence you, and how you can be around people that can influence you to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
That's a great way to end. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.